This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
No end in sight to the strike. Good afternoon. Welcome aboard. Yeah, New York is playing hardball now, all in an effort to get corrections officers back on the job. Those workers have been pounding the pavement for over a week now at prisons statewide. They want safety, salary, and staffing issues addressed. Governor Hochul's refusing. She's sent out cease and desist orders and is threatening even more disciplinary action. This guard says, bring it on.
The threat, threaten to take our health insurance, threatening to fine us $150,000. You're talking to people that are threatened every single day.
Even ex-inmates like this man admit things are rough for COs right now.
The COs need help, period. One CO for 60 inmates is beyond ridiculous. They're exhausted.
Inmates at the Collins Correctional Facility in Western New York are being moved due to the ongoing job action. While all this is going on, Governor Hochul's proposed the closure of 5 more prisons across New York. Pennsylvania has taken action to save women's sports for women. The PIAA announcing it's changing its policy to align with President Trump's executive order that bans transgender participation in female athletics. The U.S. House votes tonight on a budget blueprint that slashes taxes, cuts spending, and beefs up border security. It also invests more in energy exploration. Speaker Mike Johnson says the vote will be close.
This is a prayer request. Just pray this through for us because it is very high stakes, and everybody knows that.
Pennsylvania Congressman Glenn Thompson spoke to Family Life News earlier today.
Unfortunately, this is hard.
But worth it, says the Republican representative.
This will prevent the largest tax increase in history with the expiration of the tax cuts that we put forward under President Donald Trump the first time around, Trump 45.
Republicans can only afford to lose one vote for the measure to pass, and already 3 Republicans say they will not support it. Speaker Johnson, though, is confident he can whip up enough support to get it across the finish line. President Trump is optimistic that the war between Russia and Ukraine will be over with in the not-too-distant future.
I think the war could end soon. Within weeks.
Brett Sadler with the Heritage Foundation.
It's hard to see a path that gets us there in the next few weeks because the negotiations have not officially started yet. And I just always caution that there is still a lot of fight left in the Ukrainian armed forces and the Russian armed forces.
Washington and Kyiv are said to be closing in on a major deal for Ukrainian mineral rights. That deal is said to be worth $500 billion to the United States. What'd you do at work today? Elon Musk is giving federal workers more time to answer that question. He's extended a deadline for employees to justify their jobs. NBC's Ryan Nobles.
Federal workers do not have clear guidance as to how to respond to an email requiring they list their recent accomplishments or face losing their jobs. One Republican senator told me this tactic is nothing but intimidation.
Still, President Trump calls the strategy for holding workers accountable nothing short of genius.
We're trying to find out if people are working. And so we're sending a letter to people. Please tell us what you did last week. If people don't respond, it's very possible that there is no such person or they're not working.
Pope Francis showing slight improvement but remains in critical condition at a hospital in Rome. Chris Livesay with CBS News has the latest from the Vatican.
Doctors stress that Pope Francis is not out of the woods despite this encouraging news. 2025 marks a very special year, a holy year, the year of Jubilee, a year that comes with a demanding schedule for a Pope that already leads a punishing work ethic.
The 88-year-old Pope's been receiving oxygen and blood transfusions. He's been in the hospital for nearly 2 weeks. Last night, he was healthy enough to sit up in bed and watch some television. The U.S. Supreme Court is upholding the buffer zones around abortion clinics. In a setback to pro-life groups, the high courts decided not to hear challenges challenges to buffer zones in Illinois and New Jersey. Those zones were established during the Clinton administration to limit how close protesters can get to clinic entrances. Former DOJ Administrator Vivek Ramaswamy is now running for governor of Ohio.
I will lead Ohio to be the top state in the country, where patriots across America actually flock to instead of Florida and Texas. I will lead Ohio to be the state of excellence in America.
He launched his campaign from his hometown of Cincinnati yesterday. Ramaswamy's promising work requirements for Medicaid and merit pay for school teachers. Some terrifying moments yesterday aboard a Delta flight from Atlanta, Georgia to Columbia, South Carolina.
People started kind of saying, smoke, fire, kept saying it. We were still climbing up and it was getting worse.
Aviation expert Jonathan Cox.
This is likely an air conditioning or pressurization issue, and that would not have these people in danger at all.
The Boeing jet returned to the airport. It had to make an emergency landing. The passengers evacuated down exit slides. This incident comes just a week after a Delta jet flipped over while landing in Toronto. Self-driving cars may look good on paper, but in real life, most motorists say, not for me.
Most Americans remain skeptical and leery of self-driving cars and trucks. That's according to AAA's latest survey on autonomous vehicles. Greg Brannon is Automotive Engineering Director at AAA.
We found that 13% of consumers said that they would trust riding in a fully self-driving vehicle.
Brannon says most drivers want automakers to focus on advanced safety technology.
CBS's Jim Krasula. Clint Hill, the former Secret Service agent who jumped on the back of JFK's limousine after he was shot in Dallas in 1963. Clint Hill has now died. Back in 1975, Hill told CBS's 60 Minutes,
"If I had reacted just a little bit quicker, and I could have, I guess. I'll live with that to my grave."
Clint Hill was 93. Still to come on the Noon Report, a closer look at the HALT Act, the downside of the winter thaw, and remembering Officer Duarte.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. We've hit the pause button on winter for now. We've got some rain showers that will be crossing the area with mild air in place for now. Forecast details are coming up in 10.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. This week's winter thaw is a blessing to many, but it could be a curse if ice dams form on your roof. You sure don't want that. Roofing expert Paul Melnick tells WROC that ice buildup can cause serious water damage in your home.
You can actually see on some places it's actually a ridge. And sometimes it goes underneath your drip edge. Sometimes it's up against your flashing. There's a lot of fun ways that the water likes to travel.
Yeah, that water can, as we said, do a lot of damage. Meantime, cleanup continues in Oswego County after several feet of snow caused structural damage. The roofs on more than 40 homes and businesses collapsed this week. Experts warn today's rain on top of that melting snow could cause even more property damage. A 10th guard has now been charged in connection to the death of an inmate at the Marcy Correctional Facility near Utica. Nicholas Kiefer appeared in Oneida County Court yesterday, where he was arraigned on murder charges. Kiefer's accused of taking part in the assault of Robert Brooks back in December. That assault was captured on video. There's a huge debate in New York right now over the use of solitary confinement in prisons. The HALT Act, which passed 3 years ago, reins in the disciplinary measure. Former inmate Anthony Dixon spent more than 2 of his 30 years in incarceration in solitary confinement.
It's the perfect environment to make somebody go insane. It doesn't make you better. There's nothing to do. You keep on counting the bricks on the wall. Start thinking about suicide.
Dixon telling Spectrum News that solitary confinement is akin to torture. But New York Congressman Nick Langworthy argues it is necessary to maintain order inside prisons.
Since implementation of the HALT Act, prison violence has skyrocketed to unprecedented levels. Inmate-on-inmate assaults are up 169%, and inmate-on-staff assaults are up 76%.
The HALT Act is one of the main reasons why prison guards are on strike right now. now. A Pennsylvania politician has proposed a bill to protect the Second Amendment rights of concealed carry permit holders whenever they travel out of state. Republican Senator Doug Mastriano wants to ensure the Pennsylvania firearm license validation system is not misused by out-of-state authorities. Flags remain at half-staff today in Pennsylvania to remember a fallen York police officer who was killed in the line of duty. 30-year-old Andrew Duarte was killed while responding to a hostage situation at a hospital on Saturday.
The Lord used him to save the lives of others, even though it took Andrew's life, which I can't even believe when I say it out loud.
Duarte's mother, Nancy, recalling to ABC 27 the last conversation she had with her son.
I said to him, as I always said to him when he would leave, I said, be smart and be safe this weekend at work, and I love you. And he said, yep. And I love you too.
That grieving mother says she wants people to remember her son as being smart, courageous, and funny, and deeply loved his family and friends.
He loved me, and I loved him deeply. We were very close. He was the joy of my life. He's my only child.
Yesterday, a procession of police officers accompanied Officer Duarte's body from the York County Coroner's Office to Lehigh Valley, where an autopsy is being conducted. Duarte's funeral scheduled for Friday at 1 p.m. at the Living Word Community Church in Red Lion. The New York State Thruway authorities warning drivers today about a widespread text scam claiming to collect unpaid Easy Pass tolls. Thruway authorities spokesman John Doherty.
Easy Pass doesn't send text messages just like this. You have to opt into a text message. It doesn't come from an international number. And then also some of these people who are getting these aren't Easy Pass customers. So that should be a red flag in itself.
If you get a text like this, simply delete it. Do not respond. A popular brand of footwear is in the crosshairs for possible safety concerns at public schools. Here's Family Life's Brian Query.
Most of us either own or have seen a pair of Crocs. The shoes, made of a lightweight resin material, have been on the market since 2002. But despite their comfort and ease of slipping on and off, a new report from Bloomberg says that school districts across the country are stepping up bans of Crocs for safety reasons. Students in more than 20 states, including Arizona, Alabama, and Florida, can no longer don the hole-covered shoes in schools. Educators there have argued that the loose fit of the lightweight slip-ons can impact walking patterns and stability and increase the risk of falls or twisted ankles. Brian Query, Family Life News.
All right, Brian, thank you for that. We've got sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Is this the end of the tush push? Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, an unidentified team has submitted a rule proposal to ban the controversial quarterback sneak. NFL owners more than likely will vote on the proposal next month unless the team decides to withdraw it. I know one thing for sure. The proposal did not come from the Philadelphia Eagles. They run that play better than anyone else in the NFL by far. On to the NBA. Someone's losing streak had to end, but unfortunately for Philadelphia, it wasn't the Eagles. The Chicago Bulls snapped their 6-game skid with a dominating 142-110 win over the Sixers. Josh Giddey had a 25-point, 16-rebound double-double to lead the Bulls. For Philly, they have now dropped 8 in a row and fell to 20-37. Jordan Poole had a game-high 26 points as the Wizards knocked off the Nets 107-99. Elsewhere, Nikola Jokic dished out a career-high 19 assists. He scored 18 points to help the Nuggets beat the Pacers 125-116. What a comeback by the Minnesota T-Wolves. Down 25 points in the second half, they put on a furious rally to win in overtime over the Thunder in Oklahoma, 131-128. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led the Thunder with 39 points and 10 boards, but Anthony Edwards blocked Alexander Warriors go-ahead shot attempt with just over 10 seconds left, and Minnesota prevailed. Detroit, Atlanta, Portland, Sacramento, your other winners. On the ice, the Jets 2-1 overtime winners against the Sharks, and the Kings took a 5-2 win over the Golden Knights. That is a look at sports.
Thank you, Randy. And still to come on the Noon Report for Tuesday, Pope improves. Clemson Tigers and Farmers to the rescue.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Well, last week, President Trump issued yet another executive order, this one endorsing in vitro fertilization, calling for lower and subsidized cost, expanded access, and protection of the practice nationwide. On one hand, the executive order is fully consistent with all the others, following up on something Trump promised during his campaign. However, endorsing IVF during the campaign was more of a tactic to mitigate critiques from the left on his role in the undoing of Roe v. Wade. Kamala Harris's running mate Tim Walz, after repeatedly and falsely claiming to have pursued children through IVF himself, claimed that Trump would ban the practice as part of his plan to restrict reproductive health care and exert control over women. His counterpart, J.D. Vance, pushed back on that claim during the debate, saying that banning IVF was not even a legal possibility, though he did talk about the technology in far less glowing terms than Trump did, as one might expect from a Roman Catholic. At the time, the Colson Center joined a chorus of numerous pro-life and pro-family leaders who argued that open-ended support of IVF is not a pro-life position. Through a series of videos on the topic in our What Would You Say series, we argued that if life begins at conception, which has been a central pro-life talking point for decades, then IVF, especially as currently practiced, needs far more examination and regulation, not less. Claiming IVF to be pro-life, as some do, simply does not make it so. In fact, the evidence belies that claim. Even more, despite just how the recent executive order was worded, IVF should not even be considered a pro-fertility position. Though born children do result, the way that IVF is overwhelmingly, almost universally practiced today means that far more lives are taken by the process than survive. The embryos that are created who fail the so-called screening process are deemed not viable and destroyed. That's a process that checks for everything from the desired sex of the embryo to any potential genetic or health conditions. Now, advocates of IVF can call that widely accepted and practiced step in the IVF process whatever they want. The best word for it is eugenics. After the screening process, the remaining so-called viable embryos are then utilized to achieve pregnancy. If pregnancy is achieved in one of the first rounds of implantation, the remaining embryos are then considered excess, and that number's in the millions in the United States alone. Most of these excess embryos are left stored and frozen, literally suspended in time. A very small number of these little image bearers might be given a chance at life through embryo adoption, which is also known as snowflake adoption, but the rest, the vast majority, will either remain in storage indefinitely, donated to medical research, or simply destroyed. In the end, IVF in America is not about fertility at all. That's because it's an industry. It's a radically underregulated selling of goods and services. In the vast majority of cases, what's being sold as goods and services are people. When the president calls for IVF to become more available and more affordable, what he's really asking for is increased efficiency and decreased cost. But it's efficiency that corrupts the practice in the first place and treats kids as commodities. Still, it remains to be seen what will actually come of this executive order. Perhaps the president's merely following up on a campaign promise and doesn't intend anything else. Or perhaps he's laying the legal groundwork to expand this radically underregulated industry. Either way, the genie's already way out of this bottle. Many of us have found much to support and celebrate in the president's slew of executive orders. But we need to be clear, not in this one. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint. For more resources to live like a Christian today, visit us at breakpoint.org.
Let's head outside next. Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast. The call for this afternoon. Leftover rain showers will be departing. It's rather cloudy, a little bit of fog in spots, and relatively mild. High temps 40s. Tonight, cloud cover will break a bit. Low temps 30s. Could be a few icy spots forming overnight. Tomorrow, limited sun, clouds prevail. High temps in the 40s. Bit of rain and snow tomorrow night. Occasional rain on Thursday with high temperatures in the 40s.
right, thank you, Kevin. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Bob Price, and here's what's happening Tuesday, February 25th. Pennsylvania police say the gunman who held hostages at a hospital in York over the weekend was upset over the death of a family member at that hospital days earlier. The 49-year-old was shot and killed, but not before he killed a police officer and injured 5 others on Saturday. That police officer will be buried this Friday. Inmates have been moved out of a prison in western New York due to an ongoing strike by staff there.
The wildcat strike by corrections officers at prisons across New York State has led the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, also known as DOCS, to move inmates out of Collins Correctional Facility. The Department of Corrections confirmed the move of inmates to other prisons last night. Meanwhile, mediation talks began yesterday to end the unsanctioned strike as it continues for a 9th day today. Dee Haley, Family Life News.
Thank you, Dee. Pennsylvania is taking action to save women's sports for women. The PIAA announcing it's changing its policy to align with President Trump's recent executive order that bans transgender athletes in female sports. The U.S. House is poised to vote as soon as tonight on a budget blueprint that cuts spending and slashes taxes. Speaker Mike Johnson is confident he can get it across the finish line, despite objections from a few Republicans.
The resolution encompasses many of President Trump's priorities, from border security and defense to energy and a tax cut extension. It also includes an increase in the debt limit and steep spending cuts of up to $2 trillion. The Speaker can only afford a single defection for the measure to pass. Nicole Killian, Washington.
A new ultimatum from the White House for millions of federal workers. It's leading to more chaos and confusion in Washington. DOJ Administrator Elon Musk giving employees a second chance to justify their jobs or face termination of employment. Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski.
There is a way to do this that is proper, that is lawful, and also treats our federal employees with a little bit of dignity.
Some federal agencies are telling workers to ignore the order. Others argue for security reasons they cannot divulge the information requested. President Trump is expressing optimism that the war between Russia and Ukraine could be over with in weeks.
A lot of good things toward peace are happening.
White House correspondent Peter Alexander.
French President Emmanuel Macron here yesterday emphasizing that a peace deal must not mean a surrender of Ukraine, and at one point even contradicting President Trump, while Trump refused to call Vladimir Putin a dictator and largely focused on recouping billions of dollars in U.S. aid to Ukraine.
Pope Francis showing slight improvement but remains in critical condition at a hospital in Rome.
Pope Francis is awake, moving around in his hospital room. The 88-year-old is showing signs of improvement in what is now the longest hospital stay of his papacy.
NBC's Ann Thompson says the Pope's been in the hospital for nearly 2 weeks. His kidney failure is no longer an issue, and while he continues to receive oxygen, the levels have been reduced. It's one of the greatest aviation mysteries ever. A new search is underway for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. It disappeared more than a decade ago on a flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing.
The Boeing 777 with 239 people aboard vanished from radar 11 years ago next month. The last search, which covered 46,000 square miles of the Indian Ocean, was suspended in 2017. Now the Malaysian government has signed a contract with the firm Ocean Infinity to search again. The firm says new data analysis points to a new 5,800 square mile area of the southern Indian Ocean.
Correspondent Michael Wallace, a new report indicates many of us are skeptical about self-driving cars. Greg Brannon with AAA.
We have 26% of folks that remain unsure, and there's 61% that are afraid of the idea of riding in a fully self-driving car.
He says most motorists want automakers to focus instead on improving already existing technology. You're tuned into the Noon Report, a Tuesday edition on Family Life.
Welcome back to another edition of Hometown Heroes on Family Life. I'm Mark Webster, and this week's guest is Brittany Eisenman, who organized fellow Northwest Pennsylvania farm families to ship hay to North Carolina farmers in desperate need after flooding from the remnants of Hurricane Helene.
It's all a God story for sure. A few days after the storm, the Lord woke me up in the morning, and we have a small farm in northwestern Pennsylvania near Knox. Our neighbor farmed 2 of our fields, and he passed away, unfortunately, last June, and we had the hay bales that he had made off of our farm. The Lord just said, donate your bales to the farmers in North Carolina. I said to my husband, the Lord is laying this on my heart to do, and usually my husband is my pump the brakes part of our team here, and he said to me, he's like, make some calls. And when he said that to me, I knew God was up to something. If he gave me the green light, I just kind of knew that God was going to do something. I started making calls to try to find somewhere where we could donate our bales and find someone to haul them down, and we just quickly realized that there wasn't anything like that happening in our area, and so the rest is kind of history. The Lord just made the way himself like he likes to do.
When did that first shipment happen?
Our first load was sent down on October the 8th.
And where are we now?
We are at load 103 and 104.
Did you ever envision that from that one morning message?
No, sir. No, sir. We started with 35 round bales and just our load. We started reaching out to try to find folks who have been in hay relief work before. I had one person that I had been speaking with, and I said, how do you handle donations? And she said, I don't get donations. I pay for every load that goes. She said, you're going to have to pay between $1,500 and $3,500 a load to get your hay where it needs to go. And I was devastated when I got off that call, Mark, because we didn't have the money to do that. I tell a lot of folks, I've talked about it online, but I went out and I laid in my driveway and I looked up at the sky and I started praying and I said, Lord, I know I clearly heard you. I clearly heard you tell us that we should do this, and we can't even afford one load, let alone fast forward just a week and we had over 300 bales donated. We can't do this by ourselves. You're going to have to make a way. And within a few hours, we had 3 haulers call and say, I'll donate my rig, I'll donate my time, and I'll donate my fuel costs to get it there. And that's just kind of where God started showing us that he meant business with what we were doing.
Put this in a little perspective for us. Most of us, all we know of hay bales is we drive past them on the highway and say, oh, look, hay bales. But in the agriculture community, it's like a lifeblood in some ways, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly is. And we have one of the most incredible ag communities in northwestern Pennsylvania. This whole time, we've had farm after farm call in, and we have had donations come in. Hay kind of comes in every shape and size. Big, large round bales, 4 foot by 5 foot, sometimes bigger. Large squares that can be 3 by 3 by 7, 3 by 3 by 8. And then we have small squares that, most folks are familiar with. And so we've had donations of every shape and size come in, but you kind of need a bigger rig to haul any type of hay because it does get heavy. And so we've had folks with every shape and size of rig as well. But the crazy thing was when we started receiving bale donations in our area, we also had reached out to other areas over into the Ohio line, southwestern Pennsylvania, east of us. And we quickly realized that last year during harvest season and during hay growing season, a lot of our areas surrounding us experienced drought. And what we know now, looking back, with God's hands on everything, was we got rain when we needed it specifically for hay growth, and we didn't receive rain when we didn't need it. So we had an extremely good hay crop last summer in northwestern Pennsylvania and gave everyone an extremely good harvest, and they had more than enough to share with folks in need.
So many moving parts in this whole thing. So many things that had to come together that makes it, for sure, a God story.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Every single haul is a God story. Every single hauler that has come to us, we have not had to put out many pleas for haulers. We've had to do a lot of praying, but not a lot of advertising. And it truly is, Mark. It seems that when we have a farmer in need, a bale donation comes in that's specific for that farmer, and then a hauler comes. The Lord just brings it when it's needed, and obviously at the right time, because His timing is perfect.
That's Brittany Eisenman, who organized fellow Northwest Pennsylvania farm families to ship hay to North Carolina farmers in desperate need after flooding from the remnants of Hurricane Helene. Please join us again next time as we search for your home, your town, your hero. It's Hometown Heroes on Family Life.
I love that feature. Thank you, Mark. Hometown Heroes comes your way Tuesdays during the Noon Report. Now, you can subscribe, listen to, and share this feature along with all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
A very good afternoon to all. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Well, we've certainly taken a break from some of the bitter cold and the active weather pattern of recent days and weeks on the midday weather map. We're looking at a fairly benign weather pattern. The passage of a cold front will mean some showers that'll be departing and cooler air that'll be returning, but no big blasts of winter weather are due, at least not for now. The call for this afternoon, leftover rain showers will be departing. It's rather cloudy, a little bit of fog in spots, and relatively mild, high temps 40s. Tonight, cloud cover will break a bit, low temps 30s. Could be a few icy spots forming overnight. Tomorrow, limited sun, clouds prevail, high temps in the 40s. Bit of rain and snow tomorrow night, occasional rain on Thursday with high temperatures in the 40s.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Finally, at noon today, the Clemson University baseball team is off to a great start. They're 6-1 on the season and ranked in the top 10 nationwide. But that's not why we're bragging on them right now. We're bragging on the Clemson University baseball team because all this season, they will be going into the stands between innings to shake hands with veterans in attendance at home games.
The idea was actually introduced to us in an exhibition game we played with the Savannah Bananas back in November, and they do so much crowd participation, fan engagement, and so we got to do this with them. We thought, you know what, we have to do this in our games this season.
Clemson head coach Eric Beckich.
I'm the son of a Vietnam veteran, the grandson of a World War II veteran, so the flag means an awful lot to me personally, but our players just understand they get to play baseball in a free country, and that wouldn't be possible without those servicemen and women who protect and defend that freedom.
Beckich says they even practice how to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance at games. He says instilling attitudes of gratitude in his players is all part of the rich tradition of patriotism at Clemson University. Go Tigers! And that's our world, the world we live in, Tuesday, February 25th. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.